Hey guys, it's Dani. Alrighty, today we're gonna do a little update on the Dendrobium Phalaenopsis orchids that I own. I've never had a very large collection of these guys, but in the short time that I had them, I didn't find them very difficult, so I decided to go ahead and purchase myself a whole lot of them. So in this video, we're gonna see how they're doing, and also I'm gonna share with you some observations, maybe care tips, since I have more hands-on experience with these guys. Now, before we start, these orchids have nothing to do with Phalaenopsis. They are dendrobiums, but we call them Phalaenopsis types because their flowers really remind us of Phalaenopsis. To be politically correct, we should call them Dendrobium bigibbum type. However, especially people new to the hobby, I don't think they know this term, and if they're searching for information on these orchids, most probably they will type in Dendrobium Phalaenopsis. Therefore, I prefer to title my video as such and elaborate about the name in the video. And that is an approach that fits me and I'm okay with. So just so you know, more correct would be to refer to these guys as bigibbum. This is a species they have in their parentage. Phalaenopsis has nothing to do with these orchids. And with that said, let's start the update. Alrighty then, so two of these orchids were actually purchased last year and they were not in the greatest shape. One of them looked better than the other. One, however, was in really poor state. So let's see how they're doing today. And if you don't remember, I'll share with you the links to these videos in the description. I might add some images in this video as well, just so you see a comparison. This is the Dendrobium Blue Happiness. This is not a blue dendrobium, but rather a sort of purple. It does have a little bit of a blue hint. Now, this guy was in very poor condition when I purchased it, and last year it produced two very tiny canes. These were the two canes that it produced after I purchased it, and obviously it did not bloom. This year, on the other hand, we created two pretty lovely new pseudobulbs that are very tall in comparison to the older ones, almost the same size as the original cane that was in bloom when I purchased it. It is still not 100% recuperated, as you will see in comparison to the other one, and I'm not entirely sure that it will bloom. But I did look in the crowns and I think I saw a little nubbin that is starting to form. So maybe it will bloom. At this size, the canes are perfectly able to bloom, but right now it's more to do with recovering energy and establishing a really nice root system. You'll also observe that I did transfer almost all of my Dendrobium Phalaenopsis to semi-hydro, and this is because these guys did have an issue with the dryness on top. I have always considered these dendrobiums very similar to Cattleya orchids, but I was very wrong. Actually, for me at least, they do prefer a lot of moisture, and particularly at the top. I did have some issues with new roots growing and the tips just stopping and then growing again and then stopping, and that was not really ideal. And you can also see the older canes, they're not shriveled, but definitely they're not super plump. I did the switch to semi-hydro not too long ago, so they're still establishing, but they do have a root system, and I think the system will benefit them, as you will see with my other ones. So this has been the Blue Happiness, and please excuse the Phalaenopsis and stuff on the floor. I'm working on that side. You'll see it in a different video. So the Blue Happiness is well on his way to recovery. Next to him, a dendrobium that I purchased just a little bit before him, and P.S. the Blue Happiness was at a discount from IKEA. This guy was not at a discount because it did not look in such poor shape. It was not in the best condition either, but definitely not the same as this guy. So last year he created this pseudobulb right here, which was just a little tinier than the original pseudobulb or cane, which was in bloom when I purchased it. It still did not bloom though. It did, however, do a lot better, and this year we have a really tall cane, which, as you can see, already has a flower spike at the top. And it doesn't really translate on this camera, but he is, I think, maybe 35 centimeters tall at this point. It is taller than the original growth it came with, so he's doing wonderful. Now with this guy as well, I noticed he really did not enjoy the dryness at the top, so I switched him over to semi-hydroponics, and it looks like it's establishing really well. You can see quite a few root tips showing and growing nicely without stopping. So that's what I was looking for. That's great, and I do think these guys really enjoy their moisture. So the Purple Happiness, not much to say here. He's already established, I would say. He just needs to grow into his pot, and pretty much that's it. Alrighty, so these were the two that I purchased last year. I did also have a Dendrobium Phalaenopsis type, which I had for a few years already. This is the very dark burgundy colored one. I really liked this guy, but I received him when he was pretty young. I'm not sure if he was a seedling, but he was pretty young. These are the older pseudobulbs, and all of these pseudobulbs he grew in my care. I think I do have him for about 3 years, now that I count the pseudobulbs. Last year he produced this little tiny cane, and of course it didn't bloom, but this year he produced the biggest cane of his life. It's a little crooked, so you cannot really tell how tall it is, but it is the tallest cane he created, and also he is working on a flower spike, which I presume already will have 1, 2, 3, 4 flowers, or 4 buds that I see right now. It will have more flowers than this orchid ever bloomed for me, so that's great. This orchid was not transferred to semi-hydro because he was doing really well in the setup. Eventually he will be transferred just for the sake of uniformity or evenness, but at the moment I was not in a hurry, so I didn't transfer him, and he's okay. Being that this orchid was older and already with a more decent root system than the previous two, he didn't really suffer all that much, but I will show you at the top of the medium, I do still have some issues with the roots that simply stop growing. This one, for example. So yeah, these guys, I do believe they enjoy their water and they don't like drying out way too much. A little drying out depending on the medium, if it's organic especially, I think it's okay. I remember in the past when I had my Phalaenopsis in bark chips, they weren't all that fussy, but with clay, definitely I see a pattern. They don't like clay medium to be very dry. Reason why I decided to simply transfer them to semi-hydro, as you can see with all of these. Now these are recent purchases, and I purchased these guys, all of them, this year. So these are all the first canes they are producing. So let's start with this one. This is the Siam Jade. This is a beautiful one. So initially I had all of these guys in my older setup, the Ceramis and Leca setup, and with the pebbles at the top, they didn't like the top all that much. And since these orchids, yet again, are new and they did not have a really great root system, they really didn't like the top of that medium. As a consequence, some of the roots are simply stopping all of a sudden, like this one, but they are starting to branch out. I'm saying now they're starting to grow, but obviously if the roots keep stopping and then growing and stopping, it will take too long for a new root system to develop. As a consequence, you can see that the new growth has a little bit of a folding leaf here. This is a sign of a little bit of dehydration or lack of hydration, or improper watering or improper hydration in general. It is not super dehydrated in any way, but you can see that it would have preferred more moisture. Therefore, I switched it. With the other three, it is pretty much the same story, and in one of the cases, things got so dramatic that the whole orchid became limpy, and I switched it immediately. So this is the Dendrobium White Surprise, and he's actually perking up a little bit. This guy is still limpy. You can see how limpy this guy is, and it's not due to lack of roots. This orchid is starting new roots. It's just due to lack of hydration. So no point in new roots if they're not hydrating, right? So I had to switch him. I did this guy this week, so you can see there's nothing dramatic happening right now, but I really do hope he will get hydrated. It's pretty amazing how dehydrated he got just because of that dry top, but there we go, it happens. And the story is pretty much the same with these other two. You can see there's a little bit of pleating here, but not a lot. Although the orchids are indeed growing some roots. It was just that top layer they absolutely hated. But I do have something weird happening with one of these dendrobiums. And it's this one. This is the banana chocolate. Yet again, we're talking about some roots that were not very happy, but are now starting to grow. Look at that, we have root tips. Everything is starting to grow pretty well. However, can you see all of these marks on the leaves? These are new leaves. This is the new cane. I'm not entirely sure what this is. It might be a sort of an infection, although what it looks like to me is either mechanical damage, like water was standing on the leaves, although it didn't, or sunspots, but yet again, it's not sitting in direct sunshine. And I'm just noticing now, this one has a few spots as well. I'm not sure if it's a deficiency of something because I fertilized these guys with the same things, but being that these guys were dehydrated, yeah, obviously they didn't absorb nutrients either if they didn't absorb water. So now that I think about it, maybe calcium? So we'll see. Right now they're in semi-hydro. They are on my current fertilizing scheme, which is not totally, it's just quite different than what I used to fertilize with. So hopefully now it will bounce back. I'll keep you up to date. If this continues and spreads, it's definitely not deficiency. If it stops, it might have been deficiency, related at the same time with dehydration. Now, another thing that I changed this year in comparison to last year was the quantity of light. Last year I had only 3 of them, the old Dendrobium and the other 2, the happinesses. So I kept them under lights, under my artificial setup, and I have to say I don't think they liked it way too much. They did grow, of course, and if we take a look at the purple happiness, he wasn't all that set back. He grew pretty okay. Of course, getting adjusted and lack of roots will weigh more than the quantity of light, but I have a suspicion that these orchids really do like Cattleya type of light. I'll show you where they are positioned right now. Give me a second. It's right there. You see that whole rack is empty right now? That's where they sit and they receive. Ooh, now that I think about it, they're actually receiving Cattleya/Vanda type of light. Well, it's the best light in my greenhouse. And I think it shows. I think they actually really liked it. Before I put them there, I had them on this shelf, which again is a very high light shelf. Not necessarily as high light as this one, simply due to the fact that in this location they have bright light for longer. That's the only difference. So there we have it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this. I know some of you were asking for some updates on these guys. And you know the drill. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hate it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchids and plants videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, let's end it here because there's somebody shouting on the street. Bye. Okay, story time today. So I had a nightmare last night. Now, my nightmares, they're not often at all, and they're not related to monsters and all of those things. Usually, my nightmares have something to do with guilt. I don't know, guilt kind of haunts me. And one of the reoccurring nightmares, although it's always different, but the idea is always the same, has to do with the period in which I had aquariums, which you might already know about. Now, I had aquariums for 5 years, 6 years, or something of the sorts. At some point, I grew up and I had to start working. I got a sort of an office type of job that I absolutely did not like, but I needed money. So it sometimes happened that I did extra work. It sometimes happened that I was leaving home at 7 or whatever in the morning and come home at 8 or 9 because I was working extra hours and I was not getting paid for it. But anyway, I didn't like this job, but it required so much of me that I started to neglect my aquarium. And when you have a fish tank, it's not like you have a plant, okay? You don't water it, it goes limpy. You water it, it's okay, everybody's happy. When you have an aquarium with fish, your fish might die. And that's on a whole different level, at least for me. So during that period, my fish were starting to get stressed. I was late with the water changes. The water level was going down and there were days when I did not even look at the aquarium because I was just so tired. I just fell in bed. So mainly in the weekends when I had some time to take care of my aquarium, I would I'm getting emotional. I would feel so guilty when I saw those fish stressed. I didn't have mortality or anything because I was still within the range, but I knew they were stressed. I knew that I was not doing a good job and I felt so guilty until one day when I realized I had to give away my aquarium and my fish to another aquarist person. So that's what I did. I had to move out anyway. So the dream was over. And the fish keeping hobby over as well. That was okay though, but I still kind of live with that guilt somehow. And last night I dreamt that I was having all sorts of animals in one place, and apparently they were all my animals, but they were all suffering because I was gone from home for I don't know what amount of time, and I came back and everybody was suffering. Goodness, I hate this dream, but it keeps happening because of that experience probably. So I woke up with this dream this morning. And And during breakfast, I like to watch YouTube videos. And there's this channel that I'm subscribed to. It's called The King of DIY. I'll link it down below if you're interested. It's this guy who has a lot of aquariums. He has an Asian arowana. And in one of my working place, I was actually the one who was feeding and taking care of an arowana. So I love arowanas. Reason why I'm watching his channel. So anyway, I like to watch him because of the fish, because of remembering stuff, because I just enjoy his videos even though I don't have an aquarium right now. So I was watching this morning while I was having breakfast one of his videos, and he was unboxing some mail, and he unboxed a bunch of books, and he was like, oh, I think this is from Oliver. Yes, Oliver Knott. And he shows like this book signed by Oliver Knott to my friend Joey, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my goodness, 10 years ago when I was aspiring to become an aquascaper, Oliver Knott was one of the people who were my inspiration. And also 10 years ago, I liked to work with ADA products, or ADA, however you call them, Takashi Amano's products. They were, in my opinion, really good. I got a hang of them, I understood them, I knew how to work with them, and they gave amazing results. Mind blown. So I liked Takashi Amano's stuff and his vision. He was, I think, everybody's inspiration. So in this video, Joey shows this book signed by Oliver Knott, and he says, oh, these are pictures from the time he was making aquascapes with Takashi Amano. And then he goes on saying that Takashi Amano was such an inspiration. I'm like, what? So I Google it, and apparently he passed away 2 years ago. I just started to cry so much. It is a great, tremendous loss. But at the same time, I took it so personal because of many things, but also because of my guilt, and also because I realized I will never have an aquarium again, at least in the situation I am in right now. Having an aquarium, it's not like having a fish bowl, really. I mean, if you want to do it right and proper and do justice to fish, you need your whole body and soul in that aquarium. You don't put it on a table and it's okay. You just don't do that. And I know that if I would get an aquarium, I would be like body and soul into it, and I would destroy my health once again. It's impossible for me to have an aquarium right now, and it sucks, kind of sucks, but yeah. So I just realized that aquarium keeping and escaping and fish growing, fish keeping in general, is just as addictive as orchid growing, and it leaves such a mark. It has been 10 years since I had an aquarium. 10, I think. A little less than 10, or maybe even 10. And it still haunts me in my dreams. I still think of having one. I still imagine how it would be. I know I could have a little tank with a betta fish. They don't require a lot of space, but it's not my type of fish, and it's not my type of aquarium, so it's not for me. But secretly, I like to dream of having an aquarium, and I already have a plan for it because I have such hard water and that has such a high pH. It's 8 point something. I think the best fish for me would be the African cichlid. Because of these conditions, these guys you don't have to have a planted tank, you'll not hassle with CO2 injection, substrates, and the nutrients and all of that. It's a whole thing. It's like orchid growing. It's even more complicated than orchid growing, actually. So I dream that one day I'll have a tank with a nice background, a rocky background, some calcareous rocks and nice sand, and just using my tap water. We'll see if I need to adjust it. I'm talking like I'm actually gonna have it. Probably not. African cichlids are beautiful. They look like they belong in the ocean. They're so colorful. So I like to plan it in my head and dream about it. And you know what? If I'll ever afford to actually hire somebody to help me out with the house and cleaning and stuff, I'm gonna get an aquarium, and we're gonna have Miss Fish Girl, Cichlid Girl, something. Yeah, we're gonna do another channel. There we go. Plans for the distant future. That's what we should do. What do you think?